I've always had a fascination with internet mysteries. The darker, the better. It wasn't just about the stories. It was the layers. Icebergs, they called them. The deeper you went, the weirder and more unexplainable things got. I'd seen it all, or so I thought. But what happened to me last year proved how little I actually understood about the dark corners of the internet. This is my story, and for better or worse, I'm sharing it now. It started innocently enough. I was scrolling through a subreddit dedicated to obscure internet icebergs. Someone had posted a new one, an intricate diagram spanning 5 tiers. At the top were the usual suspects: Cicada 3301, Lake City Quiet Pills, and other well-known mysteries. But as I scanned further down, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. The man in the server. It sat at the 4th tier, a position reserved for stories steeped in cryptic lore and minimal evidence. Curiosity got the better of me. The post didn't explain much, just a vague blurb. A supposed string of disappearances linked to an untraceable online presence. A few links were included, mostly to forums and dead websites. It was vague, just enough to pique my interest without giving away too much. I had a free weekend, so I thought, why not? I clicked the first link. It led to a forum post from 2017, written by someone claiming their friend had gone missing after receiving strange messages on an old-school IRC channel. The poster's writing was erratic, almost paranoid. They mentioned a man who knows you and won't stop until he's satisfied. I brushed it off as typical internet hyperbole. The next link led to a pastebin page. It contained an alleged transcript of a chat log. The details were sparse, but there was one part that stuck out to me. User A ***. Who are you? The man ***. I'm someone who's always been here, watching, learning. User A ***. What do you want? The man ***. To show you what happens when you dig too deep. I couldn't tell if it was fake or not, but it gave me a strange feeling, like I was being warned. Still, I'd seen enough internet creepypasta to know better than to take it seriously. But then I saw the final link. It was different. A direct URL, no description. Against my better judgment, I clicked it. The screen went black for a moment before loading a plain HTML page. White text on a black background. No graphics, no ads, just a single sentence. Do you want to play? Below it were 2 buttons, yes and no. I stared at the screen, debating. This was obviously some kind of ARG, an alternate reality game. People made these all the time to freak out curious onlookers. It was probably harmless. At least, that's what I told myself as I clicked yes. The page refreshed, and a new message appeared. Welcome, let's begin. Then a countdown started. 10 seconds, no other instructions. I waited, and when the timer hit 0, my webcam light blinked on. Now, I've been around computers long enough to know how easy it is to hack a webcam, but this still caught me off guard. I instinctively reached for a sticky note to cover it, but then a new message appeared on the screen. Don't. My hand froze. I wasn't sure if it was the adrenaline or sheer curiosity, but I obeyed. The page changed again, this time displaying a live feed of my own face. Below it, text appeared. I see you. Let's keep going. I should have closed the browser right then and there, but I didn't. Instead, I typed into the chat box that had just appeared, "Who are you?" No response. Instead, another message popped up. Your IP address is redacted. It wasn't fully redacted, though. It was my actual IP address. Whoever was on the other end wasn't messing around. The messages continued. They knew my name, my location, even the model of my laptop. My heart pounded as I realized the level of access this person had to my system. I typed another question. What do you want? The response chilled me. To play a game. What followed was a series of bizarre tasks. First, they made me open a specific folder on my desktop, one I hadn't touched in years. Inside, I found an old photo of myself from college, one I didn't remember saving. Next, they directed me to a hidden file directory, where I found a text document titled hello.txt. Inside, it read, "You're doing well." I was terrified, but I couldn't stop. It felt like I was being dragged deeper into something I couldn't escape. The final task was the worst. They sent me coordinates to a location about 30 miles away. Along with it, a message, "Come alone. Bring nothing." I should have called the police. I should have done anything but what I did next. But curiosity, or maybe fear, drove me. I grabbed my keys and left. The coordinates led me to an abandoned industrial park. The kind of place you'd expect to see in a horror movie. The only light came from a flickering street lamp near the entrance. I parked my car and stepped out, my breath visible in the cold night air. My phone buzzed. It was a new message. "Go inside." The building was massive, its windows shattered and walls covered in graffiti. I pushed open the rusted door and stepped into the darkness. My footsteps echoed as I walked deeper inside. Then I saw it. A single chair in the center of the room, illuminated by a small, portable light. On the chair was a laptop. The screen glowed, displaying a single message, "Sit." Against every instinct, I did. As soon as I sat down, the laptop camera activated, showing my face once again. Below it, text appeared, "You've made it this far, but can you finish?" Before I could type anything, I heard a noise behind me, a faint shuffle. I spun around, but there was nothing, just darkness. When I turned back to the laptop, a new message was waiting. "He's here." Panic set in. I stood up, ready to run, but then I saw him, a man standing just at the edge of the light. His face was obscured by a hood, but I could feel his eyes on me. He didn't move, didn't speak. He just stood there, watching. I backed away slowly, my heart racing. The man took a step forward, then another. I turned and ran, sprinting out of the building and into the night. I didn't stop until I reached my car. As I fumbled with the keys, I glanced back and saw him standing in the doorway, illuminated by the flickering street lamp. I didn't wait to see what he'd do next. I drove home as fast as I could, my mind racing. When I got back, I locked every door and window, unplugged my computer, and sat in the dark, trying to process what had just happened. The next morning, I received an email from an unknown sender. The subject line read, "Game over." The body contained a single sentence, "You played well." Attached was a photo of me, sitting in that chair with the man standing behind me. I reported everything to the police. They took it seriously at first, but eventually chalked it up to an elaborate prank. They never found the man or whoever was behind the messages. To this day, I don't know who he was or what he wanted. All I know is that I'll never dig into another internet iceberg again. The internet has always been my escape, a world where I could lose myself in forums, stories, and rabbit holes. I wasn't the type to watch TV or go out often. My evenings were spent chasing obscure corners of the web. One night, I stumbled upon a thread discussing the Phantom City. It was supposedly an urban legend tied to a series of disappearances. The city wasn't on any map, they said, but its location could be uncovered if you knew where to look. The thread was cryptic, filled with fragmented accounts from people who claimed to have found clues. They spoke of abandoned buildings, strange graffiti, and unsettling encounters. Most of it seemed like the typical internet hype, but one comment caught my attention. It was from a user named Shadowmarker, who claimed to have coordinates to the Phantom City. They wrote, "If you're serious about finding it, don't expect to come back the same. DM for details." My curiosity got the better of me. I sent a message to Shadowmarker, asking for more information. Within minutes, they replied with coordinates and a single instruction: "Follow the path. You'll know it when you see it." I looked up the location. It was about an hour's drive from my apartment, deep in the woods outside the city. Normally, I'd dismiss something like this as a prank, but something about the way they phrased it felt different, authentic almost. The next night, I decided to go. Armed with a flashlight and a sense of adventure, I drove out to the location. The road was desolate, and as I got closer, my GPS lost signal. I relied on the map I had downloaded earlier, winding through narrow, overgrown paths until I reached a clearing. There was no sign of a city, just dense trees and silence. I stepped out of the car and scanned the area with my flashlight. That's when I saw it. A narrow trail marked by strange symbols painted on the trees. The symbols were crude, almost childlike, but they formed a clear path. This must be what Shadow Marker meant by the path. I hesitated, but eventually curiosity won. I followed the trail, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The forest was unnervingly quiet, the only sound being my footsteps crunching on the fallen leaves. After what felt like an eternity, I came across an old, rusted gate. Beyond it was a cluster of decrepit buildings, their walls covered in graffiti and ivy. This had to be it, the Phantom City. The air was thick with an unexplainable tension. I walked through the gate, my heart pounding. The buildings were eerily silent, their windows shattered and doors hanging off their hinges. I entered the first building, a small structure that looked like it had once been a store. Inside, the shelves were empty, but the walls were covered in strange drawings and phrases. One phrase stood out, "He watches." I felt a chill run down my spine. Who was he? Was this part of the legend? Or had someone been here recently? I decided to keep moving, exploring the other buildings. Each one had its own peculiarities. A pile of burnt books, a room filled with broken mirrors, and a hallway with arrows painted on the floor. As I followed the arrows, I began to feel uneasy. It was as if I was being watched. I'd stop and look around, but there was nothing there, just shadows and silence. The arrows led me to the largest building in the cluster, a crumbling structure that might have been a factory. The front door was ajar, creaking as I pushed it open. Inside, the air was stale and cold. My flashlight beam danced across the walls, revealing more graffiti. At the center of the room was a single chair, bolted to the floor. A camera was mounted on a tripod in front of it, its lens pointed at the chair. On the floor beneath the camera was a laptop, its screen glowing faintly. I approached cautiously. The laptop displayed a text document with a single sentence, "Sit in the chair." Every instinct told me to leave, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had come too far to turn back. Against my better judgment, I sat down. The camera's red light blinked on, and a new line of text appeared on the laptop screen. "Welcome. Let's begin." The screen went black for a moment before displaying a live feed of myself sitting in the chair. Below the feed, text began to appear. "Who are you?" I hesitated before typing back, "Just someone curious." The response was immediate. "Curiosity has a price." Before I could respond, I heard a noise behind me, a faint shuffle. I froze, my heart racing. Slowly, I turned my head, but there was nothing there. When I looked back at the laptop, a new message had appeared. "Don't look away." Panic set in. I felt trapped, like I was being toyed with. The next message sent a chill through me. "He's here." I wanted to run, but my body wouldn't move. Then I saw him. A man emerged from the shadows, his face obscured by a mask. He didn't speak, didn't make a sound. He just stood there, watching me. The camera continued recording as he slowly walked closer. I mustered the strength to leap out of the chair and bolt for the door. My flashlight swung wildly as I ran, the beam illuminating glimpses of the path ahead. I didn't stop until I reached my car. Fumbling with the keys, I glanced back and saw the man standing at the edge of the forest, motionless. I sped away, my hands trembling on the wheel. When I got home, I locked every door and window and collapsed onto the couch, trying to make sense of what had happened. My phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "You left too soon." I reported everything to the police, but they found nothing at the location. No buildings, no chair, no man. It was as if the Phantom City had vanished. To this day, I don't know if it was real or some elaborate game. But one thing is certain. I'll never go looking for answers in the dark corners of the internet again. The evening had started like any other. I was driving back from a client meeting, the kind of work I'd taken up after deciding to leave my high-stress corporate job. The open road, a long stretch of countryside, and the faint smell of rain in the air. It was peaceful, calming even. I was enjoying the solitude, the only light coming from my car's headlights cutting through the pitch-black night. But then, something changed. My car's radio, which had been playing a soft jazz station, crackled with static before abruptly cutting off. It was odd, but I didn't think much of it until my GPS went blank as well. Then my car's engine stuttered, and the vehicle came to a complete stop. I tried restarting the engine, but it wouldn't respond. My phone had no signal, so calling for roadside assistance was out of the question. I stepped out, the cool air biting against my skin, and opened the hood to check for any obvious issues. As I fumbled with a flashlight, I noticed something strange. The road ahead seemed to vanish into darkness, as if swallowed by an unnatural void. I turned around and saw something even more alarming. A man stood a few meters away from my car, barely visible in the dim glow of the flashlight. He was tall, wearing a long coat and a wide-brimmed hat that obscured most of his face. My immediate thought was that he might be a local who could help, but something about his stillness unsettled me. "Car trouble?" he asked, his voice low and gravelly. I hesitated before responding. "Yeah, it just died on me. You wouldn't happen to have a phone or tools, would you?" The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer, his movements deliberate and slow. The way he carried himself, too calm, too composed, sent a shiver down my spine. "There's a service station about a mile up the road," he finally said, gesturing vaguely into the darkness. "You can find help there." Reluctantly, I thanked him and grabbed my jacket, deciding to walk to the station. The man didn't move as I passed him, his gaze fixed on me. I glanced back once but immediately wished I hadn't. He was still standing there, watching. The road was eerily quiet, the only sound coming from my footsteps. The flashlight's beam revealed nothing but endless asphalt and the occasional tree. I tried to shake off the growing sense of unease, telling myself that the man had been harmless, just a stranger offering help. But as I walked, I began to notice things that didn't add up. The road seemed too empty, devoid of any signs or landmarks. And despite the man's assurance, there was no sign of a service station. Instead, I found myself approaching a dilapidated structure that looked more like an old warehouse than a roadside facility. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to investigate. The door creaked loudly as I pushed it open, revealing a cavernous space filled with dusty machinery and broken furniture. The air was heavy with the smell of rust and mold. As I ventured deeper, I spotted something that made my blood run cold. In the center of the room was a large table covered with photographs, maps, and handwritten notes. The photos were of people, their faces circled in red ink. Some of the maps had excess marked on them, and the notes, scrawled in barely legible handwriting, listed names, dates, and locations. Among the papers was a photograph of me. It was recent, taken just a few days ago, and my name was written beneath it. My mind raced as I tried to process what I was seeing. Who had been following me and why? Suddenly, I heard the faint sound of footsteps echoing through the warehouse. I turned off my flashlight and crouched behind a pile of crates, my heart pounding. The footsteps grew louder, closer, until they stopped just a few feet away. Peering through a gap in the crates, I saw the man from the road. He was holding a knife, the blade glinting in the dim light. He moved slowly, scanning the room as if searching for something or someone. My breathing was shallow, my hands trembling as I tried to stay completely still. Minutes felt like hours as the man continued his search. At one point, he stopped near the table, picking up the photograph of me and staring at it. Then, without warning, he turned and walked toward the back of the warehouse. I took the opportunity to slip out of my hiding spot and head for the exit. But as I reached the door, it slammed shut, the sound reverberating through the building. Panic set in as I realized the man must have locked it. I was trapped. Desperate, I looked around for another way out. A staircase led to a second floor, and I hurried up, hoping to find a window or fire escape. The upper level was just as decrepit as the rest of the building, but I found a small window near the far wall. Breaking it with a piece of wood, I climbed out onto the roof. From my vantage point, I could see the surrounding area. The warehouse was isolated, surrounded by dense forest. There was no sign of the road or my car. It was as if the place existed in its own pocket of reality. Before I could devise a plan, the man emerged onto the roof. He moved with a predator's precision, his knife gleaming in the moonlight. Cornered, I grabbed a rusted pipe lying nearby and held it defensively. "Why are you doing this?" I demanded, my voice shaking. The man didn't answer. He lunged at me, and I swung the pipe, managing to knock the knife out of his hand. We struggled, the weight of his body nearly overwhelming me. But adrenaline took over, and I pushed him back, sending him stumbling over the edge of the roof. I peered down, expecting to see his body on the ground below. But he was gone. The only evidence of our struggle was the knife lying on the roof, its blade smeared with dirt. I climbed down and ran into the woods, not stopping until I reached a main road. A passing truck driver picked me up, and I told him everything. He seemed skeptical but offered to take me to the nearest town. When I returned to the site with the police the next day, the warehouse was gone. The area was just an empty clearing, with no sign that a building had ever been there. My car was still missing, and my story was met with polite disbelief. To this day, I don't know who the man was or why he targeted me. All I know is that I survived, but the experience left me questioning everything I thought I knew about the world. Some places, it seems, are better left undiscovered.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for supporting this channel. It truly means a lot. As a broke college student editing all my videos on an Android phone, it takes a lot of effort to bring these stories to life. A laptop would help me create better content faster, so if you enjoy my work, please subscribe and share. Your support makes all the difference. Thank you so much.